Do you enjoy rolling dice?
I do. I like rolling dice.
Do you hate it when that 5th or 6th player shows up to game night, forcing you to play party games all night? No fear, Thunderworks has you covered.
This is Emerald Skulls, and it's a push your luck dice chucking game with real-time betting, and it plays 6 players. This prototype of Emerald Skulls was provided by the wonderful people at Thunderworks Games, and the Kickstarter is starting July 2nd. Check it out, there's all kinds of extra goodies on there, things like metal coins, a plushie, and what I'm most excited for is that 7 to 8 player expansion because this game plays great at the high player counts. Even a 6 player game has virtually no downtime because you're bidding on the tumbler's turn. It's a blast. And take a look at this beautiful box. It also doubles as a dice tray. I know sometimes in modern board games, to hear the words real-time in a board game description can kind of be a turn-off, especially for me, but it works in this one. Hear me out. One player will be the active player, also known as the tumbler. The goal is to get the most gears by the end of the game, and the end of the game is triggered by a predetermined amount of gears is set aside for the game length, and once those gears are out, that triggers the end of the game. They'll either roll 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 dice, paying 0, 1, 3, 6, or 10 gears, which are the points, and decide how many dice they're going to roll on their turn. So let's say maybe I pay 1 gear, so I get to roll 4 dice. Now, whenever the dice are in my hand, the other players at the table get to take their betting tokens and they can bid on one of these different outcomes. So it's kind of interesting because while one player is the tumbler, they don't get to have all the fun. All the other players are invested in what happens and what that other player is doing, which can create some kind of fun commentary and table talk, maybe trying to persuade the tumbler into, really shooting the moon or pushing their luck to try to get something that would also benefit you or some of the things that you bid on. Now, once the players at the table have took a moment and placed some of their betting chips on some of the different bids that they can do, the tumbler then rolls their dice. Now, after the tumbler rolls their dice, they decide where they want to put them on the skull. There are 5 different levels. Level 1, you can place as many dice as you want there. Those are known as teeth. Level 2, those are also teeth, and that level can also hold as many dice as the tumbler would like to place there. Now, when placing these dice, the tumbler does have to place at least one of them, and they can only choose one level to place them on. So if I choose to place these 2s, I can place them on here. I can't place this 3 or this 5 because I can only choose one level and I can place 1 or more dice on that level. Now, I wouldn't have to have placed both of those 2s, but maybe I want to. Then the other next level is the 3. Those are the noses. You can place as many noses as you want on the level 3. And those are handy too because you can pick your nose. So say you rolled and you were to bust. If you have a naturally rolled 3 as a nose, you can pick your nose, and you can only do that twice per turn. So you put your betting token beside the skull, signifying that you have picked your nose, and then you can re-roll those dice again, which is a good way to save your rear end if you were maybe going to bust. And then the next layer is the 4s, and you can only have 2 4s because those are the skull's eyes. And then the last level is the 5, which is the gem in the skull. So once you've reached level 5, you can't really place anywhere else because when placing on here, you can only place at your highest level or higher. So say I had placed a 3, I could no longer place any more level 1 or 2 teeth. So you're kind of in this progressive nature as you're rolling the dice. You're kind of narrowing down your options as you go. So it gets tougher and tougher and tougher to place, and you have a greater likelihood of busting out, which is one of the 5 ways that your turn can end. So should a player roll the dice and they have no legal placements, they bust it out. Another way that a player's turn can end is they can chicken out. So say I roll the dice, I place them, and I think that's good enough. I don't want to press my luck anymore. They can end their turn and score accordingly. Another way that their turn can end is if they gem out. Remember, you can only place on the highest level or lower. Well, there can only be 1 gem. So if you placed a gem on the skull, that's the highest level, and you can only have 1 gem on the skull. So there's nowhere else to go. So you gemmed out. Another way your turn can end is if you run out of dice. You simply have no more dice to roll. And the last way that a player's turn can end is a double out, meaning they ran out of dice and they gemmed out. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch. That's one of the more rare outcomes in the game, but very exciting when it does happen. I'd like to take a second, if you find any value in my videos, please consider clicking that subscribe button. It helps out a lot. So now say that I rolled and I placed those 2 2s on the teeth. I have the dice back in my hand. Now all the other players, they again have a chance to place any of their betting tokens out. It's a good idea to get your bets down early, but maybe not too early, because the first person who gets one of the bets down on one of the outcomes, they will receive a greater prize. Because the other players will stack their betting tokens on top of the other players' betting tokens, and whoever's on the bottom will get the largest payout, and then the players above them will get smaller payouts. So here's an example of doing the payouts. On the bust here, red, they were late to the party, so they only get 2 points. Gray here, somewhere in the middle, they get 3 points. And early bird blue, they were the first one, they get 5 points. So it pays to be early. But maybe you don't want to bet early. Maybe you want to wait and see what the tumbler is going to do. Are they going to really push their luck? Or do you think they're going to bust out? Do you want to bet on them busting out? Or do you think they're going to run out of dice? Maybe you want to wait. Maybe. But anyways, the tumbler would then continue their turn. They would take the dice and they would roll them again. Now, I failed to mention there are skulls on the dice, and those skulls are wild, and those can be used as any die result. The only problem, depending on how you end your turn, you may or may not be allowed to score those skull dice. So if a player simply runs out of dice, they go by the points on this side, and they wouldn't count any of the skulls. But if they doubled out, meaning they ran out of dice and gemmed out, so they had a gem in the skull's head, they would also go by this side. However, they would be allowed to score any wild skulls that they've used. And if a player chickened out, they would go by this side. Notice how they're lower point values, and they wouldn't get to use any of the skulls that they placed. And if the tumbler simply gemmed out but they didn't run out of dice, they would go by this lower side here as well. However, they would get to count any of the skulls that they've rolled. So I ran out of dice, so this eye would be worth 5, and then these teeth would be worth 2 each. So I would get 5, 7, 9, 11 points for my turn. So I'd take the 11 points and then pass the dice to the next player. And then once the tumbler has received their payout, you go through the different bids and then pay out those players based upon the outcome of the tumbler's turn. So a lot of players will get some gears, and a lot of players will leave with nothing and be disappointed and maybe browbeat you the rest of the night. Oh. Here's some examples of some of the bets you can place. The pick and bust. At least one nose pick and they bust out. This one doesn't happen all that often, but it's pretty fun to bet on, especially if you're an early bettor and you see the player, like, you know, they pick their nose and you're like, oh, keep pushing, keep going, you can do it, try to talk them into busting. Fantastic. The mad Nargash, that one is kind of rare too. You don't see that very often, and this is one that has a jackpot on it. Some of the betting conditions have a little purple bar there, so say the tumbler did complete this and they had gemmed out with only skulls. Instead of taking the scoring from the gem out with all skulls, they could take that bonus and get 5 cogs per skull that they have placed. So that could be a pretty large payout depending on how many dice they're rolling. These are fun ones to bet on. They don't pay out a whole lot because they're pretty likely to happen, like running out of dice. The double out is slightly less likely, but these are betting that the player runs out of dice, or that they double out, meaning they ran out of dice and they had a dice on the skull. And here's some more betting conditions that have some of those jackpots on there. The grin is definitely a house favorite. I love to see players just rolling 1s and 2s, and especially if you roll multiple 1s on your first shot, because then you can place even more 1s, or just go the next step up and place the 2s and just rake in 3 points per. Pretty dope jackpot there to hit as a tumbler. This game is a lot of fun. I love dice checking games. I love push your luck games because this game plays great at large player counts. There's virtually no downtime, even in a 6-player game, because when the tumbler's rolling, everyone else is betting on them, all kinds of chaos. And another thing that is equally exciting too is there's so many different betting cards. So once you get familiar with the base set of betting cards, you can totally mix it up and start adding in all these different betting cards, and it really changes the way the game plays, and it really adds a great amount of variety. Definitely one to check out. Hot, quick game. Thanks for checking out this Kickstarter preview, and please consider clicking that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching another episode of Rolling with the Beard.